Okay, so now we'll have a talk by Heike Mayer. She's a professor of economic geography at the University of Bern. She started a career in the United States and is now in Switzerland, where her main area of research is in local and regional economic development, with a particular focus on dynamics of innovation and entrepreneurship, placemaking, and sustainability. And she is also one of the initiators of Better Science, Academic Cultures in the 21st Century, an initiative that called for a rethink in the academic sector to move away from quantity and speed and change towards more sustainability, diversity, inclusion, and equal opportunities in research, teaching, and administration. I now hand over to Heike.
Great. Thank you very much for inviting me to this exciting workshop. And I think I can add to Janet's and Frederick's talk in a way that encourages us to rethink academia from a cultural perspective, but also from a structural perspective. So what I will do now is to introduce you to the Better Science initiative in the first part of my talk. And in the second part, I would like to highlight how we at the Institute of Geography are trying to implement better science in our academic daily life. So I will add a little bit to the question of evaluation, of giving priority more to quality than to quantity. I will also talk about the culture in which we work in, the academic culture, and how we can change that. So why is that important? I'll start out with a quote from Natalie Chapperley. She's a postdoc here. I'm not sure if she's here in the workshop, but we have quotes on our website of academics, and one of the quotes is from Natalie, and she says, "The lack of respect for better science has made me question staying in science over and over. I'm relieved to hear of this effort." So I think we've seen in the statistics, we've seen in the presentation by Janet and by the others, how we are losing a lot of human resources. I'm an economic geographer. I study women entrepreneurship. And we know that if we lose half of the population, we lose a lot of quality, and we lose diversity in topics, diversity in methodology, and diversity in how we approach making a change in this world. So Better Science is trying to address that with a cultural perspective. Our initiative calls for rethinking. We have 10 calls of action. The calls suggest concrete ideas for a more sustainable and diverse academic culture. And they are concerned with a healthy work environment, with improving leadership, and abolishing simplistic assessment criteria. And Better Science is supposed to be a platform of exchange. It's supposed to be also a guide of how we can implement some of these ideas in our daily work. And I hope it will become a political force. But let me talk a little bit about facts first. And some of these overlap with what Janet presented. But one maybe gets a little bit more in depth in terms of this share of public funding and competitive funding. This is a graphic, sorry, it's in German, but it's a graphic from SBFI about the share of public funding to competitive funding for the universities in Switzerland. And we see that in 2007, the share of public funding was quite larger and has sort of also increased a little bit, but the share of the competitive funding rose to over 25%. And in my own experience, I joined University of Bern in 2009. I've seen also with that a change in rhetoric, especially around promotion, hiring, towards a much more a more increased focus on the need to receive competitive grants, specifically ERC grants, to the point where sometimes in promotion committees, when we promote professors from associate to full, a ERC grant is sort of a seal of approval, and yes, this is why the person should be promoted. So competitive funding has increased. It increased culturally in importance, not just structurally, and has probably put a lot of pressure on a lot of these young academics as well. I have some data here from a Wellcome Trust survey that was published in 2020. I think some of these data points are quite alerting in terms of how we feel, what kind of healthy work or unhealthy work environment we created. The Trust surveyed over 4,000 international participants. And while they generally sort of appreciated working in academia, only 29% felt secure pursuing a research career. 78% think that the high levels of competition have created a very unkind and aggressive sort of environment. 2/3 have witnessed bullying or harassment. Only 1 in 3 feels comfortable speaking up about that. More than half have sought or have wanted to seek professional help for depression and anxiety. And 75%, well, the last 3 points, I think, get to this notion of sort of measuring and evaluation at universities. So 75% of researchers really feel that creativity is being stifled. 14% agree that the metrics that we use, they have a positive impact. So it's a very low percentage that think that our current metrics work to assess creativity. And 43% believe that their workplace puts more value on metrics than on research quality. So together, I think some of these facts are quite alerting. So this is actually our point of departure with Better Science. We have this competitive environment, publication pressures, journal impact factors, high workloads due to constant evaluation and acquisition of external funding, unequal conditions, and we have to really question the concept of academic culture. So the goals of Better Science are to inspire us to rethink, maybe to become more self-reflective, creative, careful in our work. We want to draw attention to the problem with this Better Science initiative, and we want to highlight what needs to be done to change it. And the 10 calls of action, they are actually very practical. Some have criticized us for being too much on the individual level, not enough at the structural level, but I believe that if we change also at the sort of the individual level, we will then also make a change at the institutional level. So our 10 calls to actions are highlighting extra academic work. Here we encompass not just, the publications and the teaching and everything else that we do so well. We should also highlight that we are human beings, that we have to care for people, either for our elderly parents, maybe for our children, for our friends, partners. We are also people who engage in society. We are part of societies. We are part of maybe a political committee. We do translate our work, and that needs to be valued and also sort of highlighted, maybe in our CVs, but also I think this idea of an impact statement in applications, that's a great way to kind of make this extra academic work visible. We need time to think. This is a very important issue that we heard over and over again, that we don't have enough time to think, to read papers, to really take maybe time off our complex, bureaucratic issues that we have to fulfill. We also need time to think, and not just publish, but also think about our ideas, and maybe then the next good idea will come about. Putting quality before quantity. I will talk a little bit later about that. We need to also think about how we can prioritize thoughtfully, not say yes to everything, how to take responsibility for that. We need to be careful about how we communicate, when we communicate, not writing emails on the weekend, not being available all the time, not working at 150%, things like that, and showing that in our communication. We also need to enable a healthy academic culture for everyone, students, postdocs, PhDs, young scientists. We need to evaluate comprehensively. DORA was mentioned, but also perhaps going beyond DORA, which only assesses impact of publications, but also assess whether you kind of make a difference in society, for example. Appreciate the team, of course, distribute tasks fairly in your team, in the institute, for example, and be a role model in living these cultural sort of changes in academic life. So how do we do that? How do we sort of implement better science at the Institute of Geography in Bern? So we are trying it. It takes a long time. It's a cultural change. It's a change that involves all the people, all the diverse people that we have at the Institute. And I think we are not there yet. There's a lot that still needs to be done. But a few achievements that we made, I would like to highlight. So we currently have gender parity at the level of professors. And with better science, we would like to also develop an academic culture in which care work has its place and its value. I will come a little bit to this point at the very end. We also need to sensitize more about these calls for action. We need to work with staff, we need to work with students, we need to be careful amongst the colleagues that we have. How did we get there? As I said, it took a long time. So I could show you actually in the hall, in the stairwell of our institute, we have this kind of family tree of professors. It's called Ahnengalerie in German. It's all male professors, geography professors. One even has a fixing rope, you know, across his shoulder. And there's only one female professor at the very end. It's all the retired professors that are up there. It's Doris Wastel-Walter. She became the first female professor here at the Institute in the mid-90s. And she was probably the initiator for all of this change. She was also the first female vice rector at the Uni Bern. With her came changes such as the dedication of a parent-child room here at the Institute. It's used. We have about 21 children amongst the 15 professors. Also postdocs, PhD students can use it. In 2015, we fixed 4,000 francs in our institute budget for equal opportunity. This is provided to a PhD, postdoc, also assistant professors in case they need, for example, money for additional childcare during a conference. And we are now shifting actually to spending some of this money to fund workshops that sensitize us, that address, for example, unconscious bias. And these workshops are meant to kind of share learning across the institute, not just for individual professors or individual staff, but also develop sort of a better work environment and culture. In 2018, Patricia Felber did a pilot study that helped better science to emerge. And the pilot study was done at our institute. And in that pilot study, there were actually a couple of points that the survey that I presented from the Wellcome Trust highlighted, and that alerted me personally, because many of the people she interviewed said they had health issues, depression, anxiety. They were suffering from the overwork that Janet presented earlier. We regularly celebrate the International Women's Day. We have different themes each year. Who Cares at GEODES was developed by Caroline Schor. We had Questioning Excellence, Work-Life Balance, the picture below you see about this International Women's Day. This year we had a screening of the film Picture a Scientist and talked about biases. In 2020, we did a survey of work-life balance issues in COVID, and we signed the Better Science Initiative. And lately, we've also tried to incorporate better science criteria in evaluating professorships. So what I would like to do now is I will show you the criteria we used for the professorship GeoData. I'm aware that some of the applicants might be here. This professorship has not been filled yet, but I got permission from the Institute to show you the criteria. It's a professorship that we advertised at the assistant level. And we developed a set of criteria. And the way we work here in the Institute is that this is, unlike the presenter before me, unlike in Lausanne, the Institute develops the criteria. And we do that in a very participatory manner. We involve all the different levels of students are involved, mid-level staff, upper-level staff, Untermittelbau, Obermittelbau, professors, all the units, all the professorships are involved. And we do that before we get the applications and before the commission at the faculty level meets. So we have typical criteria such as the age, academic age, also what we would expect maybe in terms of publication output, funding, who we would exclude because it's an assistant professor position. But we also have tried to address better science, and you see the criteria that are more better sciencey in yellow. So it's one criteria that the person strives for gender diversity, strives for geocultural diversity. We also looked at the quality of the letter in the research plan. We wanted to include also, because it's a geodata position, that the person has sort of an ethical use of data and contributes to solving global problems in a critical and engaged way. We wanted to also see a person that has this leadership, mentoring leadership role, or takes this on and does that so in a more inclusive way. And interdisciplinarity was important because we have human critical sustainability geography and physical geography, and sort of being sort of in as a geodata professorship that can talk to all of us would be important. Now, these are criteria that are not hard, quantitatively measurable criteria. They're more soft. We try to address them in the interviews. Students address them in their interviews. The mid-level staff, upper-level staff address them in the interviews. I don't know how well we did it. We don't have an evaluation now of these criteria, but I think that if we go further in this, I would improve it by, for example, what Janet said. I think this is a great idea, that maybe requesting a letter about impact would be really interesting, you know, changing the research plan letter maybe towards an impact letter, reading that before we go into the criteria. At the University of Bern, I think there's a lot to do still, that better science could be implemented. There's a working group right now that includes the rector, but also the Equal Opportunity Office, representatives of better science, and they are addressing, you know, the question of how can we implement it. And we see now in the rhetoric of the rector that more and more he is aware of these issues. He mentions better science, and it's a topic, it's a theme now. So why better science? I think, yeah, we need to think about excellence in a much more diverse way. We need to keep and attract talent, create a healthy work environment, and that allows us to empower us. And we need to change this culture. And the GEOP, we got, actually we were awarded the Equal Opportunity Prize of the University of Bern this year, the Prix Lux. And that's a really nice award and appreciation of our accomplishments. But there are many more, let's say, issues that we have to solve. So, for example, job sharing. The university allows applications for job sharing at professor level, but so far we only have, I think, 2 or 3 at the university level. We don't have any at the institute. There are also lots of questions about how we evaluate job sharing candidates. How do we assess their achievements? How do we assess quality, quantity? What comes with sort of a shared job? we as an institute, we have quite a few professors who work part-time, 80%. With that come a lot of questions about sharing of responsibilities. How do we balance all the requests, the complex bureaucratic work we have to do, the evaluations, everything, the institute's governance? How do we organize ourselves? When do we meet, for example? How much work can we expect? How can we share the work amongst all of us? How can we reduce overwork, essentially, with a new way of working where some of us work 80% for a time being and some work 100%. So those are a lot of issues that are still addressed, that we still need to address. And perhaps I can get you to sign the initiative. So if you go to the website, you can support it by signing it. But just not only sign it, but also try to live it and try to introduce it to your university and to your institute.